I want to introduce our guests here. We're thrilled to have them in studio to talk about the new school that is coming to North Dakota. It's not every day a new school is announced. This is a big deal in and of itself. And then to know that this Capstone Classical Academy is an affiliate of the world-renowned Hillsdale College and is bringing classical Christian education here is pretty cool. The headmaster, Paul Fisher, is here, and the two of the just tireless backers behind this that have been, getting a group of folks together, served on the board of directors, raised the funds for this. Larry and June Nygard are here. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good to see you as well. And Larry and June, nice to have you back. How are you?
Good morning, Scott. Thanks
Very
for
well,
having
thank
us.
Exciting day for you too. Exciting, this announcement now a week or so in the past, but it's got to feel good as hard as the two of you have worked and so many others, the Robsons, and I could go down the list, but there's a lot of people that have been involved in this. How's it feel, Larry?
Well, it feels great. And like you said, it's been a team effort. It's something that June and I have been excited about for years, trying to reshape education here. We think there's a better way to do it. And we think that Capstone Classical is an answer to that. So along the way, we found some great partners, including the Robsons, the Bergs, and the Lees, and others who've stepped up to really help make this happen. And we're excited to announce that this fall we're going to be opening.
This fall, a new school. It'll be in Fargo. Paul, welcome, by the way, to the community. Glad to have you here. You moved from where?
Pittsburgh.
How about that?
Yeah.
What do you think so far?
We think it's great. The winter's magical here.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, Pennsylvania, 5-6 degrees, warmer. It's not that big a deal. Maybe a little more wind.
These 50-degree swings here you don't even think about it because it's just all cold.
Yeah.
If it swung that much in Pittsburgh, it would be going from 30 to 80 in one day.
Well, our hearts are warm, just so you know.
Yeah.
What is a headmaster?
I don't really know yet. I've been called that for years. But people think it's just a snobbish way to refer to the superintendent or the head of school. We don't think so. I mean, there's a lot of tradition in classical education where headmaster was the title, going back to the British schools, yes. But if you go to India today or any place where, there's formerly schools that were maybe started by the British back in the day when they were running the world, headmaster was a title that was used often. So I think sometimes we harken back to the old days just to kind of remind ourselves that there's some things about education that we've forgotten that are really good. And so that title makes its way around classical schools often.
What is a classical academy? What will a Capstone Classical Academy be?
Well, classical school, if you ask different people, you might get different answers. There are classical schools that are affiliated with Christian leadership. There are those that are very far left. The idea of classical is that you're helping students to be fully human. And in most of our schools, we'd say that means we're pursuing wisdom and virtue as the goal of education, that there's something transcendent in purpose about education. And classical at Capstone really means that as we pursue truth, goodness, and beauty, we see that as personified in Jesus Christ. And at the same time, classical schools are great for really good public and civil discourse. One of the things I love about visiting Hillsdale is that I can sit down in the cafeteria with any students would welcome me at their table, and they'll debate issues all day long. And they're inspired and they're animated, but they appreciate each other. And liberal students and conservative students alike, atheists, agnostics, devout Christians, Catholics, Greek Orthodox, they enjoy the dialogue. And so it's an education that welcomes logic and reason and rhetoric so that we can have really good conversations and find ways to do things better.
Boy, America needs more of that, doesn't it, right now?
We certainly do.
Yeah. And one thing I feel pretty good about is the public schools here are better than they are most places. But what you're talking about are things that they legally can't even begin to include in their curriculum, right?
Or are afraid to.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between, the zeitgeist of the day where we think we're not able to do things, but maybe we are, and people aren't pushing that envelope. There's the lack of courage, maybe. There are serious pressures not to. You can pursue truth, goodness, and beauty without being sectarian. And I think that that's something that we've lost in the schools, predominantly in the progressive movement that started in the late 19th century with schools, and that John Dewey, perfected in all of its harm to kids, where they're basically just churning out workers. And that's the idea. And we're talking about actually helping students to have purpose. And that transcends any particular denomination or faith. And it can be done. Faith could be discussed in the public sector, and it just isn't. It's taboo.
Yeah, good point. Is critical thinking taught anymore in the public schools? I mean, I could go down the list here, but our public school system has become woke, unfortunately, has it not?
Well, the woke risk is everywhere. So if you go to a school, people might come to Capstone and think, well, this is a conservative school, so we're just going to preach to the choir. We're going to tell everybody what they want to hear. We're only tuning into Fox News and so forth. And so I think the term woke is, if you're conservative, it's a comfortable term to use because it's about the other side. I'm not sure what the adjective is about us. If you're a conservative leaning person,
Truth. Give me the truth.
What's the word if you don't critically reason on our side? And what we're concerned about is that parents who come to our school who might be pursuing truth, that they are certainly critical thinking there. So we teach logic as a course.
Wow.
More than once, they'll go through formal logic. We want students to learn when they're not arguing well. Whether we agree with their conclusion or not is not the issue.
I want to jump ahead. You're starting this fall with classes, and this will be a K through 12 school. I'd love to know what the graduates of the Capstone Critical Academy, what that typical student will look like and how much that's needed in our world today. So we'll talk about that when we come back with our guest from North Dakota's newest school. Capstone Classical Academy starts this fall. Continue our conversation now with the headmaster, Paul Fisher, from Capstone Classical Academy, as well as Larry and June Nygard, supporters and members of the board of this group as well. And June, you wanted to remind us that I said K through 12, but this is actually pre-K.
Correct.
Right. So this is, and right now you are enrolling pre-K through 12.
Right now we're enrolling pre-K through grade 6, and then we'll grow by at least 1 year at a time after that.
Right. And if you
But
explain,
we will be pre-K to grade 12.
yeah, we explain that. So explain how that'll roll, Paul.
Yeah, right now we really want to start at a scale that we can do well. And on top of that, we've got facilities that we need to expand. So we're opening pre-K through 6th, and families are already applying. We have 30 students in the first week since we had our press conference. Well, they started applying 3 weeks ago before we even went public, really.
Interesting. So again, if I'm a 6th grader, I'm going to be
You'll graduate
and go to 7th grade. And
That's right.
Then there'll be an 8th grade. And so that, yeah, it'll just
class
continue
of
to roll out.
2029
Yeah.
So
is our first graduating class.
So if you enroll as pre-K, you know you can graduate from Capstone Classical
That's correct.
Classical Academy.
Yeah.
So describe the student, kind of your atypical student, once they've graduated, once they've had the benefit of pre-K through 12 at Capstone Classical Academy.
Yeah, well, the wonderful thing about our students is that they're polished, and by that we don't mean that they're slick, right?
Snobby.
No.
Yeah.
No. What we mean by that is that they're finished. That's why the word capstone is used, and that's what they do. As seniors, they have a capstone project that embodies what we're trying to do for our students, and that is that during their junior and senior year, they're basically working on a thesis, and so they're going to have to defend that at the end of their high school career before a panel of faculty and community members who are well educated in the topic that they're speaking on. So they'll choose a controversial or difficult question to answer. And at the age of 17, they'll start working on that. They'll use curriculum they've learned, they'll do research, they'll go and they'll interview people who are in the field. They'll wrestle with what's really going to be a deep question that society is wrestling with. And they have to take a stand, and they have to do it winsomely. And so that logic and that rhetoric, and having read the great books and spent time with great minds and exemplars in oratory and in thought over the years, will equip them to do that well. And then what they do after that is they take that to their college campus. They take that to their workplace. They take that into their community, to their home, to their church, and they become an asset, to the community. They don't all lean left. They don't all lean right. You would say, well, a classical school, the way you're describing it, sounds like a right-leaning place. Because of the pursuit of truth, because of objective truth, goodness,
and the
beauty.
faith sometimes,
and the faith, right?
I'm not saying faith is owned by the right, but it's conservatives tend to be comfortable wearing it on their sleeve.
But
right?
you can have an agnostic family that leans left in their solutions for society's problems.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is our students will discuss, not as though the person's evil for having a view that leans left, but instead they'll discuss the idea itself, so that they can get there rather than using ad hominem to insult one another. they actually try to have progress, and hopefully then the right idea wins, because we're based in logic and a common goal to get to the truth, goodness, and beauty that we all desire.
Larry and June, I want to ask either of you wants to take the same question, basically. Why did you take this on as a cause? What are you hoping comes from a typical Capstone Classical Academy student when they're done? What motivated you to say we need this?
Well, we probably both have different motivations, so maybe I'll speak with mine first. And I think Paul touched on it. I think the important thing is that we teach our children how to think, not what to think, Scott. And I think we're spending a lot of time trying to force kids to think and believe something that doesn't escape the rigor and the challenge that Paul talks about in a classical school. And for us, we need a bunch. I mean, it all starts with liberty. And I think back to when the United States declared independence, and the young men and the women and those that supported that. Interesting, they're all classically educated. But if you read some of those documents, you're just impressed that that's a 20 or 30-year-old writing those documents. I mean, can you think about that? And think of how well they were educated and how well-rounded they were. That's really what started us looking backwards and saying, what did they have as an upbringing that we don't have today? Because I sense, as you've touched on, the rancor and the discussion today is just not there. Everyone's talking at each other. They're not talking about ideas.
Nobody's changing anybody's mind.
No.
They're just yelling at each other.
Yeah. And I think this dialogue happens when you really have the liberty to discuss it freely.
Unfortunately, we're running short on time here, and I want people to be able to know how to support this effort, whether that be donations to help this build the facility you're looking for, and also to have kids there. June?
And we're also on the Giving Hearts Day website.
Oh, very
and
nice.
So it
Very
would be a
nice.
great opportunity for people to immediately impact scholarship opportunities for families that are applying. And so we would encourage everybody to take a look at Capstone Classical. You can type that in on Giving Hearts and find us and
Learn
make
more about it.
impact. You
everything
bet.
else.
Yeah, and I think June brings up a great point. It's a principle of the board that this not be an elitist school. And so we're working very hard to make sure anybody that wants to attend a classical education has the opportunity.
So it's not going to be
Amen.
for a lack of finances to be there.
That's right.
Website is what, Paul?
CapstoneClassical.com.
CapstoneClassical.com. Wonderful affiliation with Hillsdale, first of its kind in North Dakota. We're going to learn more about this in the coming year. Thank you both, all three.
Yes, sir. Thank
Thank
you.
you.